Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we're listening to Dr. James Zogby, founder and president of the Arab American Institute. We will return to our speaker in a minute for our traditional City Club questions. We encourage you to formulate questions for our speaker now and remind you that your questions should be brief and to the point. Today's forum is the annual Aaron and Ruth Zychik Memorial Forum, which recognizes a very generous gift from the Zychiks to the City Club Forum Foundation Endowment. With us today at the head table is Bob Lustig, who helped orchestrate this legacy contribution. Bob, will you stand so that we can show our appreciation? Thank you. We're pleased to welcome guests at tables hosted by Access and Baker and Hostetler. Thank you for joining us today. We're pleased to welcome to our forum students who are here as part of the City Club student program. Participation of these students is made possible by a generous grant from John Carroll University. With us are students from Life Skills of Lake Erie. Would our student guests please stand and be recognized? Now, we would like to return to our speaker for our traditional City Club question and answer period. We welcome questions from everyone, including guests. Holding the microphones today are City Club Director of Development, Jessica Allen, and intern Kim Leary. Now, first question, please.
Dr. Zogby, yes. Would you comment on preemptive war as an instrument of foreign policy?
Well, you know, it's interesting that the concept of preemptive war was developed in this administration. It's been around for a while, but it was designed as a way of asserting American power, of establishing American hegemony, because the concern was that we were losing power in a world that was, though we were the sole power at that point in the late 90s, they were concerned that we would be soon moving into a multipolar world with China and Europe coming together and Russia re-emerging and other parts of the world as well, threatening or challenging American power. So the notion was we would assert ourselves, we would do it forcefully, we would establish ourselves as the hegemonic power in the Gulf, and that was all the validation we needed. It had nothing to do with the threat of Iraq. It had to do more with establishing an American century and establishing our hegemonic role in the source of the area that's the source of oil resources. And what's happened? What's happened is that we've become weaker. And we have exposed the weaknesses of the American war machine. We were able to take out Saddam and destroy his regime, but we found ourselves sitting on the ruins of a battered Iraq that we cannot bring together. We ended up emboldening Iran, abandoning Afghanistan, finding extremism growing, as I've said, and the result is that having power and the ability to use power is not by itself justification to use it. I made this argument when we had these debates in the council I was telling you about. They wanted to do Iraq. This was like a week after 9/11. They were talking about Iraq. We've got to do Iraq. And they were so, they would get themselves so excited about it. And we've got the assets and the resources. And I just at one point said, sorry to be crude, but I said, wanting to do something real bad and having the ability to do it is not justification for doing it. We tell that to teenage boys sitting in the back seat of a car, because there are consequences to not thinking through. Just because you can and you want to, that's not enough. And they didn't think it through, and there we are today. Now, the other part of preemptive war that bothers me, of course, is the international law implications. And we don't respect international law, but nevertheless, it's there. And frankly, the notion of preemptive war, the notion that Israel has begun to use and that we also use with sort of assassination, that we say are ticking time bombs or whatever the term we use is it moves us into the law of the jungle. It says, how do we know the guy was guilty? Because we attacked him. That's how we know. And if you get the wrong guy, it becomes something you apologize for, and everyone's supposed to forget about it. But you can't apologize for Iraq right now, and you can't apologize for the 4,000, couple hundred Americans who've died, and the hundreds of thousands of Iraqis who've died and or been severely wounded, and the 4+ million who are displaced and cannot go back. The question we have to ask ourselves is, yeah, we had the power to do it, and we did it. Was it worth it? Was it worth it? And are we better off today than we were then? And every single indicator, normative and otherwise, would make it clear the answer is no. And so that's what I think of preemptive war generally, and this one in particular.
Dr. Zogby, seems to think that nationalism or secularism is on the way out, and more, especially in the Arab countries, and more religious overtures have taken over. And not only in the Arab countries, but all over the world, including the U.S. What's your perspective, and what caused that transition to take place?
Well, I think that we're in a situation where, for different reasons in different places, religion, quote unquote, and as a PhD in religion, I would speak more technically about it maybe than some, I think has come to play a significant role in providing meaning, and not in a good way. I do not believe that that religion should play the role of providing political certainty. I think religion is about our relationship with the divine, with God. It's about our relationship with each other that is defined by our relationship with God. And because it is based on belief and faith, it is never certain. Religion is, in fact, based on doubt. Theologians talked about the leap of faith, meaning that I am not certain, but I believe. There's a difference between the two. Now, what frightens me, and therefore religion implies a certain humility. One, as the great saints in history have shown, this sense of anguish over, do I know? Am I certain? Do I know God? But what troubles me about religion becoming certainty is that it's not religion at all. What that is ideology. And ideology and dogma and doctrinaire beliefs are dangerous. Because when you have a world filled with people who are so absolutely certain that they're willing to commit and do anything, from in the South when they were lynching African Americans because God gave them the right to do it, to the Crusades and on to suicide bombers today, to kamikaze pilots, and to commit enormous atrocities in the name of absolute certainty, which is frightening, I think, and leads to rather disastrous consequences. People of faith are not people of absolute certainty. But why are we here today in that situation? I think precisely because our leadership has gotten us in the mess we're in. All of our leadership, both there, here, everywhere. And therefore, there's almost a primitivization of our thinking. Like when primitive man, the rain fell and he needed to know why, and he conjured explanations, and the more frightened he became, the more certain he had to hold on to this primitive idea that his explanation gave him the justification to understand what was going on. The more threatened he became, the more insistent he became. How dare you say my explanation for this weather change is not right? I know it in my gut it's right. Don't take that certainty from me. As people lose certainty, lose the sense of direction, become more alienated in their lives, become more frightened about the consequences of not knowing, they grasp for something that gives them that sense of certainty.